working?
Now try again.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to those people joining us tonight for our agenda forum in the gallery, and to councillors and staff. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to elders past and present and their descendants. So welcome to that agenda forum. And tonight we have everyone in attendance, but we have two councillors attending via electronic means tonight. So we have Councillor McCulloch and Councillor Singh. Are there any other apologies? No? And there are nil leave of absence tonight. And declarations of financial or proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality. Are there any from councillors that haven't yet been filled in? If there are, we need to fill out the form that's under your desk there and then hand them up to the CEO.
Just noting if I could, Madam Mayor, that I have declared impartiality.
I'm going to read that one. We also have one from Mr Stephen Kane, the CEO, declared an impartiality interest in item 14.3.1, the proposed amendment number 215 to local planning scheme number 17, which is the additional use lot 4, number 1447, Great Northern Highway, Upper Swan, LPS 17-215, as his son works for Planning Solutions. Question, Councillor Bowman.
Madam Mayor, I think I may declare an impartiality interest in item 14.2.3 as one of my boys played cricket, and this year for one of those games he played at Lilac Hill. I think he got 5 runs and about 3 wickets, so it's probably one of his better games, so I better declare that one.
Have you actually filled the form out? You're about to. Thank you. So it's a declaration from Councillor Bowman. Petitions. I think we've got 3 this evening. Do we have any petitions to be handed forward from the community? Here we come. And that's Les. Okay, we'll read that out.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors and staff. The petition I'm bringing to you tonight comes via the Hazelmere Progress Association, who has appointed me to pursue it. It's, I'll just read out the preliminary to it. This is from the people who live at the end of Anthea Street in a new section of 25 houses called Hazelmere Estate. We, the residents of this area on the list below, which consist of 25 people, request the Hazelmere Progress Association to approach the City of Swan to have installed a street sign at the corner of McMullen View and Anthea Streets. At this junction, there is some considerable risk of motor vehicle accident to families and children crossing the road to Anthea Street Park. This petition has also come via the City of Swan because in trying to locate the route which we need to take to reach the appropriate authorities, the President of the Association sent this letter to our CEO. And there's only one thing I'd like to say about it, is that when I was collecting this petition, I walked out from the area, and here comes a young lady who is going flat out, the ideal person that we want to slow down. And so I took the policeman's act and called her to stop, and then said a couple of things, and she sheepishly signed my petition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Marshall, and Councillor Bowman's going to hand that forward to staff. Are there any other petitions from the gallery to be handed in? No? That's it? That's it? Okay. All right, if there are no more petitions, we move on to...
One from me, Madam Chair.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I have a petition of 376 signatures, and it calls on the council to prohibit recycling bins on Waldeck Road, Caversham, due to rubbish dumping. There are a number of that I've taken out to include to make sure that that number is accurate. And the detail is quite long, so I'll leave that to staff to consider.
Thank you. As discussed earlier, that petition, which we've been working through with staff, is at this point incomplete as the addresses aren't supplied, only the suburb. So we do take that into consideration and we acknowledge all those people that have signed that petition, and we'll just look to seek to get those addresses first before it's accepted. Thank you. Are there any other petitions from the gallery? No. So we move on to reports and notices of motion. In 6.1, there's a bit of additional information from officers here. This is regarding the item 15.3 from Councillor Bowman for citizenship, ceremonies and catering, and you'll find that there is a table that was missing from the report with a description of catering costs and invoicing details there. We move on to 6.2, deputations. In accordance with the current procedures for public participation at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations were required by 6 p.m. on Tuesday, 7th of February 2024, and all written deputations received by 3 p.m. Tuesday, the 7th of February 2024, which were circulated with the preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening. So tonight, 14.2.2, Amendment 1 to the North Ellenbrook West District Structure Plan, in-person deputations, and we have Shannon Wilson, not in support of the officer's recommendation. Hello, Shannon. And you have 3 minutes. Hang on a sec.
Oh, thank you. I'd also just like to mention, just as disclosure, I am the Communications Manager at Trillion Trees Australia. I do not support this resolution. My first point is at the June 9, 2021 Council did not support the North Ellenbrook East or West District Structure Plans for reasons outlined on page 88 of your report. Unless all requirements for council support have been met, it seems highly illogical that council would consider supporting an amendment it did not approve of in the first place. It should also be noted that the City of Swan local planning strategy does not identify lot 5892 as future urban area. There's also a high ecological value within the lot area. The Environmental Protection Biodiversity Act recognised the following protected matters of national significance within the lot. 7 listed threatened ecological communities, including endangered Banksia woodlands. 34 listed threatened species, including habitat for all 3 black cockatoo species. In addition, the EPBC recognises 18 endangered and critically endangered plant species, whereas the report commissioned by Stockland, the developer, and produced by CDP, which is what's in front of you, recognises 1. There's also 8 migratory species, 12 marine species, and a conservation wetland. The site to the west also has a Bush Forever site and a Bush Forever site to the south, which makes the lot an important thoroughfare for wildlife travelling for food and water. The lot also contains intact endangered Banksia woodlands, as mentioned, which have been described by the CD report as in excellent and very good condition. I assume the council is aware that Banksia woodlands are an endangered ecological community that are protected under the EBPC Act. And with estimates as little as 19% remaining, you should also understand that this is not possible to restore. Up to 30% of what grows in a Banksia woodland cannot be viably propagated. This means that many species will simply become extinct along with the wildlife that relies on this ecosystem. Their rarity means they cannot be offset, and their delicate biodiversity does not respond well to mitigation measures. Once they're gone, they're gone. Importantly as well, and surprisingly to when I was looking into this, I believe that continued mining will actually have less of an environmental impact than the approval of Amendment 1. The city report claims that the majority of the site will be cleared as a result of the current land use and is a logical extension of the proposed expansion in North Ellenbrook. This is incorrect. The current urban resource mining approval only extends to 92 hectares of the site, and the total lot size is 163 hectares. Therefore, if mining continues, 71 hectares of bushland will remain, significantly better than approving Amendment 1, which allows for only 15.8 hectares of native vegetation to be retained, the majority of which is around the conservation wetland. Oh, nearly at time. It's also highly unlikely that approval would be given for the mine, considering to mine the rest of the site, considering the classification of Banksia woodlands as endangered in 2016.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I'm so sorry. Did you have much more?
Literally, I do, but just the last thing I wanted to say is that, it's unlikely that it would be approved for mining again, as the original mining approval predates the Banksia Woodland EBPC rating by many, many years.
Thank you. If you just want to stay at the lectern, and we'll just see if any councillors have any questions for you. Are there any questions from councillors to Ms Wilson for her deputation? Right. Councillor Hallett?
Thank you for that deputation. I wasn't aware that Banksia woodlands were not able to be propagated. Could you just give me a bit more information on that, please?
Yeah,
Through your
absolutely. And this
knowledge of-
information comes from the work of Trillion Trees Australia, who has been working in the ecological restoration space for 45 years. So it's not possible to propagate a lot of those species simply because they need certain conditions to be able to grow. Therefore, even if we were to claim mitigation and offsets, they're not possible. You cannot create a Banksia woodland.
Further question? Yep. Sorry. And so in saying that, what is the best way forward? Would it be protection of a Banksia woodland?
Absolutely. Protection and retention is always the best way. And look, we're dealing with an ecosystem that is almost gone. I mean, if we don't protect the tiny piece that's left, it's not something that we can bring back.
Okay, Councillor Catalano?
Yeah, thank you. What do you think clearing of that Banksia woodland is going to have on the population of the cockatoos, both the red-tail and white-tail cockatoos? Which
I think that the entire area, including that particular lot, is a known roosting, feeding habitat spot for cockatoos, which is increasingly disappearing. You know, they're facing competition from, invasive bee species, obviously land clearing as well. So the fact that we consider knocking down a single Banksia is ridiculous.
Okay, and do we know how many numbers of birds are up there that use that area? Is there any way
I
that
don't
we
have
could-
that figure to hand, but I could certainly provide it.
Oh yeah, would you be able to do that by the
Absolutely.
next meeting and provide it to all councillors?
Yeah, sure can.
Along with a copy of your deputation, please.
Yeah, no problem. I've also included everything I've referenced here if anyone's interested. And I mean, if council isn't aware of the North Ellenbrook expansion, I'd encourage you to become aware. It's the largest urban expansion in this region, and the environmental impacts are devastating.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That'd be great to get that
Thank you.
information.
We've got a question from the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, my question relates to the source of your information. You mentioned there are 7 threatened ecological communities, 34 threatened species, 18 endangered plant species. Where did you source
So
that
this is
information?
directly from EPBC. They have a portal, referral tool. I've got the report with me now, if anyone would like to see it, and I'm happy to circulate it as well.
And what's EPBC?
EPBC, the Environmental Protection, the body that basically is responsible for the Act.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And
Councillor Catalano?
that's a federal act, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Environment, biodiversity,
I've got the full term here, sorry,
Yeah,
it's a
great.
mouthful.
and it overrides the state government act, doesn't it?
It
Because
certainly
it's a
does.
council- It's a Commonwealth piece
They're
of
federally
legislation.
protected matters of national significance.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any further questions for Ms Wilson? No, that's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next we have Richard James, in-person deputation for not in support of the officer's recommendation. Hi Richard, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Richard James from the North Swan Land Conservation District Committee, and I support everything that Shannon has just said. I don't really like being told what to do, and I suspect all of you on council don't appreciate being told what to do either. However, I do think it is incumbent on you to seek out as much information as possible so that you can make informed decisions on issues that come before council. So if you haven't already done so, watch Black Cockatoo Crisis on SBS. And I know it can be distressing viewing, but be brave and watch it. Our iconic black cockatoos are under threat from higher temperatures as a result of climate change, pesticides, and of course, habitat loss. whether that be feeding, roosting, or nesting through residential development. And a lot of this habitat loss is occurring in the city of Swan. So we have a duty to prevent it happening. That is why I am opposed to this amendment to the North Ellenbrook West District Structure Plan to include Lot 5892. This additional block of land, which is 163 hectares inside, and is a significant portion of it as Bankshire woodland, which is prime Carnaby cockatoo feeding and roosting habitat. We cannot afford to lose it to the bulldozer. So, councillors, please read the Amendment 1 in the report. Watch Black Cockatoo Crisis on the SBS and make an informed decision when this comes before the vote next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from councillors for Mr James? Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Richard. Richard, you've probably seen in the agenda two maps, page 122 and 123. I'll just sort of show you those.
Yes.
On one, the light blue part, it shows the Bankshire woodland area, which is just the top part. Why, in your understanding, because you understand this a lot better than I do and more knowledgeable, why would it only be that top part?
I can't answer that question because on the total look at that particular map, you've got the sand mine, which is on the southeast corner, but the rest of the block is Bankshire woodland as well. So I don't know why they have only called that top strip the Bankshire woodland.
And the second question is obviously the two maps, which took me a while to understand. One's telling me it's all Bankshire woodlands. The other one's telling me it's not really important Bankshire woodlands, in my words, because they want to develop there. It's not downgraded, degraded, Bankshire woodlands. What's that normally?
In this, the whole of the Ellenbrook catchment, historically, the area has been used extensively for livestock. And so therefore, if cattle, predominantly cattle, are allowed to roam and feed throughout Bankshire woodland, they will degrade the low species of plants. But of course, the larger trees will be unaffected, apart from the increase in nutrients from livestock. But I don't believe that whole area has been utilised for livestock.
Okay, and I had Councillor Howlett next.
Thank you, Richard. Could you please remind me of the group that you said that you belong to?
It's the North Swan Land Conservation District Committee.
And one further question, please. I suppose it's two questions. Are you representing them tonight? And if so, how many members are in the North Swan Land Conservation Committee, please?
We have a membership of approximately 20 people. We have a committee of treasurer, secretary, and then normal committee members, and then other people who attend our meetings. I'm also the chairperson of the Ellen Brockman Integrated Catchment Group, which is based in Mouchet. But the North Swan LCDC is affiliated with a government agency. So we do actually report through to the Commissioner for Soils within the Ag Department.
Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thanks. Getting back to Bankshires, you wouldn't consider them understory. I mean, they're quite a large tree. Yeah, so cattle wouldn't have been eating
No,
Bankshires.
that's why I said
right.
that.
Good.
Excuse me.
Okay, so the Bankshires themselves haven't been degraded by any cattle, even if there were some there. But I just wanted to also ask you, do you know, is all Bankshire woodland protected under the EPBC Act?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, that's maybe something I can ask somebody else later on. Good,
I
thank
can find
you.
out for you if
Oh,
you would
that'd
like.
be great. If you wouldn't mind finding that out, and then also you could send it to all councillors as to
Yes.
whether that whole block would likely be protected under the Act.
Yes, I'll
Yeah,
find
great.
that out for
Thanks
you.
very much. That'd be great. Thank you.
Are there
Thank you.
any further questions for Mr Janes before he leaves? Nope. Thank you very much, Mr Janes. And we have third on the list is Mr Phil Cloran, not in support of the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I please give my spot to Sue Conlon from the Urban Bushland Council? She's just here.
Can we advise that?
Yes, you can.
Yes. It's,
Thank you.
so we have 3 minutes, thanks, Sue.
Thank you very much to the Mayor and the councillors. My name is Sue Conlon. I'm from the Urban Bushland Council, and our members are volunteer bush care groups who freely volunteer to protect and enhance their local bushland and are highly regarded in every local government. I'm speaking today because of my deep concern of the scale of clearing of endangered Banksia woodland, critical habitat to our unique black cockatoos. They make Perth a wonderful place to live and visit. North Ellenbrook is the interface of the remaining Perth bushland and suburbia. This vehicle-dependent North Ellenbrook West urban development, which you are being asked to add more land to, is bounded by Bush Forever on both sides. Bush Forever seeks to protect 10% of the 26 vegetation complexes of the Perth Metro. 10% is insufficient to save species. Australia has made an international commitment to the United Nations December 2022 that will protect 30% of land to stop this exponential loss of species. Ecological corridors and buffers around Bush Forever are just as important as Bush Forever, and this is definitely a linkage and a buffer. Together, Lot 5892 and the surrounding Bush Forever make this a special area to protect for many reasons, including to allow future generations the same wonder of nature that we have enjoyed. Climate moderation, ecosystem function to maintain water, soil and air quality. The executive summary you are relying on for your decision is misleading. The sand mining lease was granted in 1988. The land is classified as environmentally sensitive and must have a clearing permit and must be rehabilitated. So it's misleading to say that most of the land will be cleared when it is unknown whether any further clearing will be allowed, as the land has been federally listed as a TEC and critical habitat for endangered black cockatoos. This must be referred to the federal EPBC for assessment. United Nations Human Rights warns that failing to protect biodiversity is a violation of human rights to a healthy environment. DUA last November released a report on the balancing of our groundwater and why we cannot allocate any more groundwater. So would it be wise to put a residential development in a fire-prone area? Firefighting is pretty water intensive.
Thank you, Sue. I was just wondering if you had much more there to add.
Yeah, I've got a little bit more.
How much more?
A couple of paragraphs.
Do we look for, you happy to extend? Is there anyone against? You can continue.
I'm not sure whether you're aware, but all LGAs have committed to 30% canopy cover by 2040. So how will the City of Swan manage to establish this when developers have left no backyards, too small a verge and with expensive scheme water on a cleared block? I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Local Government Act was changed, gazetted in 2023, so that the general functions of a council have to consider the impacts of climate change, impact on future generations, and to recognise the particular interests of Aboriginal people and involve them in the decision making. This proposal has not considered this and must be withdrawn until all the issues are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Are there any questions from councillors to Ms Conlon for her deputation? Yep, Councillor Catalano.
Thanks. I wonder if you might be able to answer the question that I just asked Mr James, and that is, do you know if all Banksia woodland is protected under the EPBC Act?
Banksia woodlands of the Swan Coastal Plain, which this is included in.
Yeah, and they're all protected.
Yes.
Even if it's you know, so-called degraded.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't
It's
matter.
degraded. And the other thing about the cattle too
Yes.
is that they trample the young seedlings. So Banksias that have had cattle grazing in them have no opportunity to recover.
Okay, but in this case, I think that he said there wasn't. But so they're all protected under the Act.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And a question from Councillor. No, it was Bowman. Did you want it? That will come at the end of the deputations. And there are no further questions. Thank you very much for that. And we move on to 14.2.3, Lilac Hill and Ellenbrook District Open Space Dog Prohibited Areas. Oh, okay. We want to leave them to the end, weren't we?
There's these, refer to Madam Mayor, that part 6.3 of the agenda deals with questions to staff.
But that's not, Madam Mayor, through you, that's not what we've normally done.
We understand.
after
If it's a
each
good
section-
question, we'll ask now through staff.
Yeah.
Just one moment. Councillor Bowman, staff question.
Like, someone turns the microphone. There we go. I think it's important because it was question from what was said in the deputations. First question, I heard that there was 92 hectares for sand mining. Is that currently approved? And or if it is approved, do they have to keep getting approvals, or can they just go mine the 92 hectares now?
For you, Madam Mayor, if you look at the map that was circulated, or if you look at the site, the southern part of the site, the 92 hectares, is a mine tenement approved for sand mining. But for each, it's a phased exercise. So they have to apply for every component of the mine site. At the moment, it's on the southeastern side, and obviously the mining tenement, correctly stated, was approved prior to the Banksia woodland. So it is evident that for future mining activities, they will have to go back and get approvals for each component of that site. Having said that, the whole premise of this proposal is based on the fact that the whole tenement will be mined and cleared. And Madam Chair, if I may, I think it's really important because it may impact all the discussion. As council normally deals with structure plans, those are local structure plans that are dealt with under the town planning regulations. We have to be very clear that what we're dealing with in this instance, a district structure plan that's been prepared as a strategic document even prior to the MRS being changed for the area. So the purpose of this district structure plan is to give that strategic guidance and input into the MRS process that will follow. So currently this land still zoned rural under the MRS, and clearly the first part of this district structure plan that was approved had a condition in there that prior to the land being able to go to urban, there are certain things that need to be addressed. And for that northern component of the district structure plan, it's already been approved. All the detailed environmental studies are currently with the EPA. As you know, a metropolitan region scheme cannot progress to advertising even to start that process until the EPA has looked at it. So the intention of this district structure plan was to do an investigation of this land, and they've used the studies that were available at the time to inform that, and then so the district structure plan doesn't give approvals for development similar to a local structure plan under the regs. It's just that strategic level. That will then be followed by the MRS. Well, firstly the EPA assessments, then the MRS, then there will be local structure plans that will deal with the absolute detail of all the services and constraints on the land. So I think we just have to look at this in that context.
And Madam Mayor, my second question is, there was reference to North Allenbrook West and North Allenbrook East. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was the council at the time did not approve that. However, state government overrid us. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Mayor. The item went to council in June 2021, I think it was, or 2022, and in August that year, the WIPC approved the district structure plan for the western and the eastern area, but highlighting again with all those provisions that all those things have to be addressed before the MRS can be continued to urban.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano, you were next.
Yes, thanks. That goes, I'm just referring back to the 2021 decision because it was not, council knocked it back because of concerns relating to funding, staging and connectivity of infrastructure. And there was a requirement for an amendment to the North East Regional Framework for there be an amendment to urban expansion. Did that happen? Has that happened? That this from the framework to urban expansion, did that happen?
Through Madam Mayor, in the normal planning framework, you've got the sub-regional frameworks that determine the overall land use. That is then followed by MRS amendments. In the framework, this land was identified as an investigation area. From the city's perspective, we said they need to follow the sequential planning framework as it stands. The Commission has decided that for these proponent-driven applications, there are these in North Allenbrook, and there were others in the metropolitan area as well, that these studies through the district structure plan will basically replace that part of the strategic framework and become that strategic framework. So you would see that the strategic framework for the Perth at 3 million has not been amended at all or reviewed. It's supplemented by these studies, and this is one of those studies that sits under that strategy. So formally, that framework has not changed.
Oh, okay. So what about this change, this amendment to urban expansion? That wasn't needed. Is that what you're saying, or is that been sidestepped, or has that been?
Yes.
What happened to the urban expansion?
Urban expansion is not a statutory requirement. That is just the strategic framework for development at a high level. So that's been bypassed and replaced by this review.
Okay, fine. Thanks. So it was bypassed. Okay. So, and it also in that decision, council called for significant amendments to that framework, and I wondered, were those significant amendments the same thing as this amendment to this urban expansion kind of stage? Is that what you think this was?
The amendments that, and I can circulate the list, when it came to council in June 2022, there was an appendix that listed the modifications that we proposed. I'll circulate that to council before the council meeting so that you can have a look at that. Mm-hmm. But essentially, when it went to the commission approved the district structure plan with a list of modifications that entailed all or some of those that we anticipated as well. And that district structure plan has now been signed off by the commission as an approved structure plan.
Okay, I'd be also like to know which of those conditions were met or were sort of modified or met in when the state government made their decision on it after we knocked it back. Those concerns that we had that were listed, which of those were met and which of those are outstanding? Could you provide that information when
Madam Mayor, I'll provide that information. I can tell you that some were met and the others became conditions of approval. So they
okay, which were the ones that weren't met? I mean, can you remember offhand, or is that something that you just
like, for instance, the environmental constraints that we've raised at that point, they've made a provision in that approval that those environmental studies need to be concluded before the MRS can be lifted, the urban can go to urban. So, but I will provide you with those details before the meeting.
Great, thanks, that'd be good. And just one other final question is, just getting back to that interchange then, I just wanted to have real clarification that the City of Swan is not required to contribute anything to that interchange, that big interchange at Morella Road, I believe it is, isn't it? Is that absolutely not going to contribute a cent of ratepayers' money to that?
Madam Mayor, that was one of the, obviously, the main issues that we raised when this came to council previously, and I can read for you in terms of the approval of the district structure plan, there was a specific provision in there that the new interchange to the Tonkin Highway is not to be included within any local development contribution plan to be managed by the City of Swan. The interchange will instead be funded with the assistance of federal and state governments to a combined value of $75 million, with the balance to be funded by the landowners on the eastern and western district structure plan to the value of $25 million. The proportion of funding from each landowner will be determined based on the need and nexus and the principles established. So that was our main issue at the time, and that is definitely confirmed as a provision in that approval that this is the case, and we are aware that the State Solicitor's Office is in the process of drawing up that arrangement between those parties.
Thank you. And I had a further question from Councillor Howlett to staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This has got to do with the mining, the sand mining. Was that a licence that the City of Swan granted, or is that state government grant?
No, that is not. The City of Swan is not involved in that approval.
We also had a question from Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, my question is through obviously to the planning staff, and it's about the environmental reports that have been used in the proponents' report. So I'm seeing here Terrestrial Ecosystems did a report in 2020, and Harewood Fauna Assessment was done in 2007 by a zoologist, Greg Harewood. Both of these, I believe, and I can be corrected on this, were commissioned by the sand mining companies. My question is, in the city's report, anywhere have we done our own independent study to determine whether this should go ahead?
Madam Mayor, again through you. I think, and I would like to answer this and refer back to my initial advice that I've given, that it's at the strategic level. So normally what happens is that high-level environmental and other studies will be prepared by government prior to them including that land as urban land in the sub-regional frameworks. Obviously, that didn't happen. And in 2012, when that document was identified, this land was purely identified as a future urban land for investigation. So they left that work for the proponents to do. Now, how the system works, the proponents will only start spending that money if they know that the land's earmarked for future development. So what they've done is they've used all available information, and that's why they've used information from the sand mining, the earlier information, as a desktop exercise to get the strategic document to the point where they can say, okay, now it is, we'll look into it further. There's enough evidence that the land's got potential for urban development. The Western Australian Planning Commission will now look further into this, and so the approval of that district structure plan actually raised the issue at government, and that gave the security or certainty to the developers to now spend the money to do the rest of the work. And that is why the detailed studies are now with the EPA. So we don't do those studies. We can only rely on what was available and follow the process that the WAPC agreed to.
Okay, so the EPA would do their own environmental study, is that right?
Mm-hmm. No, they will assess the detailed studies that the consultants have now done, because the
Right, so-
consultants have now got certainty that that area's got potential to progress.
So I guess the question is, are environmental consultants a bit like lawyers? You know, you've got sort of two sides to every argument. Should we not have an environmental study that supports the biodiversity value of the land rather than looks at it from a development perspective?
We certainly don't have, so we do have our biodiversity mapping available, which obviously is based on the information that's available on state websites and the rest of it. And these high-level studies that were done before. But we don't do that detailed studies that's required to determine whether a site can be developed.
Okay, thank you.
And further question from Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. Sorry, I just get very confused because if it's federally listed as a threatened ecological, as a TEC, by one layer of government, like the top layer of government, then we've got the state layer of government assessing it as degraded, and then we've got the local government not doing a report because we don't need to, because we're relying on the report provided by the mining company that gave the report to the state to say it was degraded. It's confusing. So my question really is, if there's an option, is there an option for us to conduct a report, or is there not?
It is a huge task for the city to do those studies, and there's no need in the planning process to do that. That will be, if we're a developer, you will do those studies. But the relevant authority here is the EPA that will govern that. So they'll make sure that they get the relevant studies before any decision. That they will make sure that they've got enough information even before they allow the zoning application to progress. So that responsibility lies with state government. It is also, I just want to mention that the report identifies the Banksia woodlands over the whole area. And then further on in the report, they start to overlay it with soil conditions and the wetland demarcations. And through that work, I've then proposed that certain parts of that area can be developed where the area is degraded. But that is a proposal at this stage which has to be refined through that further studies and will be reflected in later on through the process. We wouldn't be able to have that detail at this stage.
I'll take one more final question, Councillor Catalano.
The EPA haven't assessed it yet, though, have they?
No, they haven't.
No, they haven't. I mean, that's just the proponent's report. That's them saying it's degraded. Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions from other councillors who haven't asked questions of staff yet in regard to this matter? No? I'm sure you can contact staff during the week if you've got any further questions. And we're moving on to 14.2.3, the Lilac Hill and Ellenbrook District Open Space Dog Prohibited Areas, in-person deputations from Mr Ian Selou. Not in support of the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Ian. You have 3 minutes. And just push that button.
There you go. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name's Ian Selou. I'm a ratepayer and a resident. And today I speak on behalf of the 192 members of our Lilac Hill Dog Walking Group who are opposed to this motion. I won't rehash the arguments we made in our public submission, which I emailed to you all on Monday, only because they never made it into the final report, very surprisingly. Instead, I want to focus my 3 minutes on the deceptive process that has been revealed by the FOI. As far as I can see from about a couple of hundred documents provided to me, there is between January 22nd, at the end of the last one, and August 23, when you brought this back into the committee, there's no evidence that dogs are harming the ovals, dogs are interfering in sport. In fact, there were 14 ranger visits to Lilac Hill, all of them with nothing to report. They didn't find any conflict. The FOI did find 7 complaints about dog poo, but only from 3 individuals, 2 of whom work for the council. The other one was from the cricket club, and he found dog poo not on the oval, but on the pavilion. The ones from EDOS come from the centre manager, who complains endlessly about drowning in dog poo, But then in emails goes on to say that he refuses to put out dog poo bags because they might attract dogs. So the emails also show that Lilac Hill was pre-selected before 23 by the staff because it's the epicentre of resistance. If they can get this one, they can get the rest. There's an agenda going on. The FOI showed the cricket club complained directly to the ex-mayor after he pulled the vote in February 22. The mayor connected the Director of Community Welfare and told her to fix it and provide him with regular updates. Subsequent emails from the staff say the plan is to separate people and dogs in public shared space, but it is unpopular and expensive. FOI clearly shows the staff had no evidence when they claimed ongoing conflict as the reason for this actual proposal. The draft report isn't believable. They say that there was 152 survey results from Lilac Hill, 57% against the proposal, but they also say that the response was primarily from the dog owners who were strongly against. We've got 192 members. If only half of them voted, then all of the rest of the submissions were against it, then we would still end up at 63%, not 57%. There were 75% in the web comments, which they only provided very few of them to me. And more importantly, they wouldn't provide me the actual survey. We don't believe the survey, and it needs an independent audit. Closing ovals won't fix anything. In fact, hiring more rangers and closing ovals is guaranteed to cause conflict, not fix it. And this will be ongoing, and we need to actually fix it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sala. Is there any questions from councillors to Mr. Sala before he leaves the podium? No questions from councillors? Are there any questions to staff regarding this deputation? No?
Yeah, I've got a question, if I may. I just would like, it's not in the report, I don't believe. I've read it several times. I cannot understand why the southern oval has been selected as a dogs prohibited area, and yet the others have not, because I believe cricket's played on all of them. So why has that one been singled out? Can any member of staff explain that?
Maybe Mr. Bishop would help.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's simply that that's the primary oval. It's more heavily used than the other one in our understanding. So whilst we went out to consultation on both ovals, based on the feedback, we considered that that might be more appropriate.
But if we're protecting cricketers against dog do, surely we protect them all. So that's the odd thing about it. Would you not protect them all? All the cricketers against all the dog poo, I mean.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's simply, I mean, obviously there's a lot of cricket ovals in the city and the vast majority remain open as dog exercise areas. It's just the premium nature and the regular use of this particular oval as the main oval.
I guess the next question is the current situation, the way we would enforce people picking up their dogs' stuff would be basically signs, and presumably we've got a local law that requires people to pick up dog poo. Is that right? And if they don't pick it up, then it's enforced by the rangers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Through you, Madam Mayor.
And I guess the next question then is, if we're going to have a no dogs on this oval local law, presumably the enforcement is exactly the same, enforced by rangers in the same way.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can you just repeat that question again? So
if we are going to... we've got too many people with their microphones on. Can you hear me? Yep. If we're going to create a dogs prohibited area on one oval, then the enforcement would be, again, through rangers to, if people use the oval with their dog, then the rangers would be the ones responsible to deal with that. Is that correct?
For you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. There's a small number of prohibited areas across the city. This would be added to that small number, but it would still ultimately be for rangers to enforce.
So I guess in both scenarios, the enforcement effort lies with the rangers, and probably the amount of effort is the same.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to some extent. Obviously, one of the issues we have in these situations is that people can access the Oval at certain times, but at other times when there's sporting activities, they can't. Obviously, that can create some confusion unless people really understand all those rules. So the concept is usually, if you have a prohibited area, you're able to make that very clear to people, and that's an easier message generally to understand. There can be other reasons for prohibited areas as well, but it's just a consistency. Obviously, what we're talking about here is the fact that incidents and issues around dog excrement or rushing the greenskeeper can occur at times when sporting activities are not occurring as well.
Okay. We actually did miss moving to Lena Bakshi's deputation. We'll do that first, then go back to more questions to staff. So my apologies, Lena. Your question will be next after this. You're right to turn that on there, Lena. Just push it a bit harder. You go, and you have 3 minutes.
Wrong button. Okay. Madam Mayor, councillors, thank you. Actually, I'm quite proud to have the moniker of the epicentre of resistance. You know, in a time when causes are fought with a like, I think community engagement is democracy in action, and it's the best. I just want to make a few points. I'm hoping not to run over time. The first one is access to public space. Safe and accessible public open spaces are pivotal in building healthy and well-connected communities. For all of you who've read Jane Jacobs, the guru of urban planners, strangers are far more common in cities than acquaintances, says she. And it is in public open spaces that people engage in the possibilities of turning strangers into acquaintances. You know, this represents our kind of, public spaces represent our social, cultural, economic, political values. And access to public open spaces is a democratic right that I feel is endowed to each one of us as a member of this society. I mean, in this case, those members of society just happen to be regular walkers like me who walk with four-legged companions. Just to add to that, dog walkers or walkers with dogs, are large enough, or if not the largest group users of Lilac Hill. Excluding this group of users to privilege the rights of another group is actually like a silent privatization of a public space. These are public resources paid by me and people here who are ratepayers, and thus it is incumbent that we all have access to this in some shape or the other. Quick one, research shows that dogs are efficient conduits for building social capital in a community, with dog owners and non-dog owners too. Try resisting a wagging tail and a ball in tow. Ian's dog Millie has been co-opted into innumerable water games by children at the park, and these moments of joy and connections contribute to community well-being. So we've got some well-being person here, apparently. Over the years, many of us have formed friendships, and talked to each other. We formed friendships with people who otherwise we would never share a moment with. Okay, and it is through these relationships and friendships that citizens build trust in a community and a sense of community. That we're here is a testimony to that. In spite of this kind of, benefits of unstructured and joyous play and research backing that, it's really interesting that pets, as a way of being part of our community, are kind of unrecognized when we do policies and planning for public open spaces. I urge the council, that you might want to look at contemporary research that does that. Diversity of users. In a recent conversation with a councillor, I was told that I would have to use Marshall Road Park because there was no possibility of new parks due to the shrinking amount of land available in the city because of state government policies on housing density. This comment is really surprising. Sorry, I've got one more paragraph. Is that okay? Yes, thank you. This comment is really surprising to me because if land is a shrinking commodity, then it's really incumbent on us or on the council to ask the question then needs to be, how best do we use shrinking land and how best do we accommodate multiple users rather than saying we're just going to ban this group of people. Finally, respect for space. A lot has been said about the damn poo and the mess of the dogs and interfering with sporting games. And I just want to remind us that interestingly, like after a game, I find myself with a little dog bag picking up chips packets, straws, beer cans, plastic, which, given the environment of the Swan and where Lilac Hill sits, are actually much more detrimental than my dog's little poo. To reiterate, parks are a community asset, and unless declared a private resource, no group should have exclusive rights. The second, instituting a ban on dogs with or without leash when the community is largely not in favor of such bans is actually regulatory overreach and a breach of trust, given that 95% of us actually did oppose the last one. You're our elected representatives, and I kind of feel like in a democracy, it's my expectation that I am heard. And finally, I really urge the council to take this off the table. You've got much more bigger issues like black cockatoos, like we're little.
Thank you very much.
I'm
I'm going to
done.
just end it there, just so we've given you quite a bit extra time. Thank you to finish up. Now, any questions to Ms. Bakshi first from councillors, and then we'll go back to questions to staff. So, Ms. Bakshi, if you'd just like to come back to the podium. Yes. Are there questions for Ms. Bakshi first? Councillor, is your question for Ms. Bakshi? Question from Councillor Catalano. She was first from the last.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, both you and Ian, how many dogs are at Lilac Hill? Yeah, oh, well, when you go down there normally, how many dogs are there? Sort of just a general kind of.
We estimate 300 dogs use it regularly.
Yeah, how many? Yeah.
190 dogs in our group.
Yeah.
And not all dog owners use it.
Yeah.
We estimate up to 100 dogs a day, but probably usually in the range of 50 or 60.
100 dogs. And if you guys don't go to Lilac Hill, where else would you go?
Okay.
If you didn't, if it was out of, it was out of bounds for you.
Yeah. So
where would you go?
Okay, so when this whole thing started before, I took, just to avoid the dramas, I started to take my dog down to Fisherman's Reserve, and I can promise you my dog ate human poo.
Okay, if we can just quickly get back to the question, which was
Fisherman Reserve.
Sure.
In
So
Guildford.
where would you go? You would go there. You would go to
in
Marshall
Guildford.
Road.
That's the one in Guildford, is it?
All right.
In Guildford.
Sorry,
yeah.
the only other comparable is
Yes.
Marshall Park. But Marshall Parks is currently signed as dogs on lead only.
Where is that one? Sorry.
It's on the other side of the river.
near Vitamin
and
Park.
Vivish.
Oh, Ray Marshall Park.
Ray Marshall Park, sorry.
Oh, I thought that was
It's
dogs on
currently
lead.
signed as dogs on lead only,
Yeah, that's
even though only the pathway is actually gazetted that way. And that's been brought to the council's attention on numerous occasions. They refused to change the signs.
Okay. All right then. Thanks.
Councillor Bowman, you had a question. Was that for Ms. Bakshi?
Yep. You mentioned that you have a democratic right to take your dogs there. Do you agree that those others who use that oval have a democratic right not to have big dogs come running up to their kids?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I agree
Okay.
with that.
The second question is...
Can I?
No, you've answered the question, thank you. When you take your dog there, is it in the morning or is it when sport is being played?
Never during sports, because I know.
Okay, so
I
it's
don't
not
want my
during
dog chasing
not during
balls.
sports. So do you know what goes on with other dog users when sport's being played if you don't go there? Then with your dog?
Yes.
Or I'm asking this
Just be
person,
gentle with your question.
Ian.
There aren't. I think a lot of us are very respectful of that, and people don't go there when there's sport being played.
Okay, so you don't go there, but you don't know. So you don't know what happens.
No. We talk to each other, right?
Okay, so you've heard it from others. Does your dog have recall ability?
Yes.
Do everyone else that goes there at the time you go there, when it's obviously not sports
Yes.
being played, has recall ability?
I can guarantee that.
Are you aware that there's other people that use that oval that their dogs don't have recall ability?
To be honest with you, and it sounds like an overstatement, but I have not seen that.
Okay. Have you seen any times, obviously you're not there when sport gets played, where dog owners allow their dogs to go through the middle of the cricket pitch and then have arguments with the cricket
I have
users? You
never seen
don't see that?
And there was a time when we were taking our dogs there when the sports were on, and I have not seen that, and I go there almost twice a day.
Okay, so would you agree that there's probably two issues here? One, there's no issue in the morning when there's no sport or training being played, but two, there potentially is an issue with dog users and the sports?
I am not. Yes, I agree with that, and I need to say this. None of us is coming here to say it's all about 24 hours.
Okay.
What we're saying is that there needs to be a place where there's a merry medium where multiple users can actually be accommodated.
Okay, thank you.
And that's not about just one oval or two, it's about how do we all live there happily.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors for Ms Bakshi about the dog prohibited areas? No. Are there any questions from councillors to staff regarding this issue? We only have 2 listed in-person deputation. Oh, no, we still have to get to Mr John Gatchell in support, but I'm just asking if there's any questions rounding up these 2 deputations that they may leave. No, no questions there. So we move on to John Gatchell in support of the officer's recommendation. Thank you. And you have 3 minutes.
Geez, I have a great respect for the City of Swan coming here. I thought there'd be 2 people and about 5 words. So been in the city for a long time, our family, and it's a credit to what you do. Got 3.5 minutes, haven't I, Lena? Certainly, our cricket club respects dogs. I think there's 259 player members, and I'd at a guess to be 200 that own dogs. So that's first and foremost. I think a lot of the dog owners dog walkers that come to Lilac Hill actually come from other areas because it's quite residential. So and the reason they come there because the ovals are so great, which is a credit to the City of Swan and hopefully Midland Guildford. This is a premier cricket ground. So I guess to the Deputy Mayor who talked about the 2 grounds, the actual bottom ground, which we host all the matches that we do for the WACA, and that's actually our second ground. The main ground is the top ground, but that ground is the bigger ground for the crowds. So good point, I guess, what you made. For us, we certainly don't want to change the City of Swan's way about what happens to Lilac 2. You've got a curator there that runs a lot of machinery. If that was classed as a place of work, you could not have a dog run off a lead, running into a roller or a mower. I think a few years ago, something changed where the signs were dogs need to were on leads, which made it easy for your curator to control things. Once we come off lead, it opened up a few issues. And I've got pictures of dogs running onto our grounds during training last night. But I'm not here to push that from the cricket club. I think there's a way we can sort it out in this sort of space, and that is Lilac Hill is a premier cricket ground in Western Australia. It would be, other than the Optus Stadium, the WACA, the premier cricket club, or the ground, and probably the club in Western Australia. Our view is if dogs are on leads around the grounds, certainly the 2 middle grounds, the top ground, a little bit tricky because it's not used quite extensively, but we train through the week, but you've got a curator that these grounds take a lot of time to prepare. There's lots of insecticide, there's rollers, there's mowers. We're protecting dogs as much as we're protecting dogs running out of cars and running onto ovals. The rope around the oval isn't the end of the oval. There's cricket balls. Players are hitting 6s and 4s over the ropes. I've seen Facebook of people getting hurt, which we don't want, but it's a premier cricket ground. So again, the cricket club, we want to find a way with the City of Swan to work through this, but we don't want to ban dogs, but we think dogs on leads around both the grounds and down the south, down to the river and up the top, I think it's fine, but again, we're saying we're not into anything.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from councillors for Mr Gatchell? Councillor Bowman.
Thanks for that, John. John, couple of questions. So are you saying that your views are that dogs should always be on leads, or is there ability for dogs to be off leads at certain times?
It's tricky during cricket training and games because it's only a portion of what it takes to prepare your wickets at Lilac Hill. And you have a curator effectively on a roller, on practice wickets, on mowers, spraying for bugs that don't make Lilac Hill look like it does. I think a lot of the reason that people love walking dogs at Lilac Hill is the way it looks. It's the jewel of the crown to the City of Swan, in our opinion. No, I think there's a place for both, but I just think around what really changed is when the signs changed that dogs could be off leads around the two grounds, for just the facts, everything, there was more dogs running out. The curator had to be more aware of what was around him, and there was so much more stuff to pick up through the pavilion, and we were effectively still doing that today. But you go back sort of a few years ago when it was dogs on leads around the two ovals, we could manage it. And there might be a day when you walk your dog on a Tuesday afternoon or a Monday morning when there's no training because the wickets are starting to be prepared. Why couldn't you walk your dog down Lilac 2, the main, on a lead? So I guess we don't want to ban dogs being walked across the ground, but it certainly is a lot easier to manage when they're on a lead, certainly from a safety of the dogs and certainly for cricketers, but also for the company that has to effectively look after those two grounds.
Okay. Is there any further questions, Councillor Bowman?
So obviously there already is a restriction on dogs being there during practice and sport. That's a requirement already. So what I'm hearing from you, the other time or the other issue is when the curator's working?
Yeah, I think it's free. When you say that there is restrictions on management of time, I think I said that was last night. I'm not here to certainly have a go to Ian and Lena. Is that right, Ian and Lena? But that was last night. Tuesday night training. There's a dog and a fella there right on our A-grade training. Well, there's not someone from the city that can come and tell that fella to grab his dog. But the two coaches said to the fella, mate, your dog's effectively grabbing a ball right in front of us. And he laughed at him and then he walked off. And the second photo is you can see the fella again. I'm not trying to, you can see the fella walking and his dog's...
Can you just pass that around for councillors to have a look at, please? Thank you.
That was last night. So how do you police it? I feel for the council, for the staff. How do you police it? Well, to me, the Creek Club is just have dogs on leads around those two main grounds, and then at least anyone that's there can say, the curator can say, just be mindful. I've got a roller coming out. You need your dog on a lead because of the sign there.
Okay. Do you have a further question, Councillor Bowman?
Yeah, I do. So obviously what you're describing there is a compliance issue, and whether it was on lead or off lead, it's still going to be a compliance issue. But what I'm hearing from you is better signage. Previously reduced it. The other question is, and you've sort of touched on it, your coaches and team managers, usually your team managers are the one that always raise issues. How often would they raise issues about dogs interfering with games or training?
Well, it's tricky because the dogs can be off leads, but they're not meant to be off leads during training and games. So, but they're not going to police that. And I feel for your staff that are going to come down, and they're going to come down on a Tuesday night and say, don't let your dog do that. Where if we could go back to dogs on leads around the two grounds done, then at least we can say to that person, just be mindful your dog needs to be on a lead, because there's a sign there that it's going to save a lot of money, and it's going to really go back to at least where everyone is not protected, but a dog runs out and does something to a kid, or a dog gets hurt by a mower or a roller, at least there's a sign that says your dog should be on leads around these two ovals. And that, I think, to me is the...
Thank you. We had a couple of further questions from councillors. So we have a question from Councillor Doran. You're next. Okay. And then was there a further question still from Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got a question. Do you support the officer's recommendation then?
Well, yes. Well, say I don't want to go against... No. Well, the two grounds are the same. You said it yourself. So potentially it's going to be almost impossible for the city to police that.
Okay. And Councillor Henderson had a question too.
Thank you. John, really appreciate your time. knowing how this ground has been used in the past for A-grade first matches of the year and all those things, and the quality of the ground, ideally, and I think we should have a responsibility of keeping it at that level. And virtually every A-grade oval that I can think of has at least a 1 metre high pipe and cyclone wire fence around it to keep animals and people out. Have you, look, I love that ground because it's open, I get that. But we're going to see more and more and more people with dogs coming on as the city grows. Do you see that as something that might be a solution in the longer term?
I hope not. We put in an application to the City of Swan to put a fence around Lilac 2 for the WBBL games, and it didn't get through. And in the end, you know, it's not really what we want to do. I think we can all work through this together if everyone sort of thinks we're not only protecting cricketers, we're protecting dogs. It's actually a fairly busy work environment. If that was a business that was working on those grounds for anything else, I'm not sure you'd be able to have dogs or anything off a lead around that area. So for our part, we're protecting what's around there. I don't think we need to ban dogs on a particular ground because I think it's going to be too costly for the city. We just think if dogs are on leads around the two ovals, you can head down to the south on that area down there, and you can head up to the right at the top if you want to take your dog off a lead. But you certainly shouldn't be able to not walk your dog around. And on a Monday morning, if you're walking your dog on Lilac 2, so the curator's working there, and you've got your dog on a lead, past him, I can't see why you could not do that.
And the other, just to finish up, as a percentage of the whole area, it'd only be about 20% of the area would be the A-grade oval, would it? Because it goes right up to the northern parts where the other ovals are.
Yeah, so we train on the main, which you see at the bottom, actually the main ground is the top ground. And that's where most of during the week all the training is, and then obviously the games are on Saturday and Sunday. But saying that, there is a third ground and there's games up there as well, so we're not sort of leaving them to nothing. But one of them is a synthetic turf wicket on the left-hand side, which is concrete, so there's no machinery required. And the other one is not a premier cricket ground, but it's certainly Swan Athletics ground. So again, I'm sure we could find a way.
Anyway, Councillor Knight had a question for you.
No, it's all right.
All good. Are there any final questions from those that haven't asked a question yet for Mr. Gatchell? No? Thank you very much for your deputation. Are there any questions to staff on this issue? Councillor Henderson, you had a question for staff.
Just speak to Councillor Johnson. In regard to, I'm thinking longer term, consideration of a fence around the primary oval. It's got some significant advantages, but there are, of course, the downside. Any idea of the cost and what considerations there were when it was had been discussed by the club?
Mr. Bishop.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as Mr. Gartrell highlighted, the club did propose a fence about a year or so ago around the oval. That was considered by the city initially, but it was considered that would be actually more restrictive. Obviously, if you have a fence, that certainly prevents dogs accessing the oval, but it also prevents everybody else from accessing the oval when cricket activities are not occurring. So if you want to go there and have a kickabout or something like that, you wouldn't be able to effectively do that if you had a fence. So, well, okay, unless you have a gate or something like that and you're going to allow it to occur. The other thing is, just to clarify, the proposal is only to prohibit dogs in the staff report for the oval. The rest of Lilac Hill Park, all the areas around the ovals, along the river, the footpaths, other than the two playgrounds, and I need to make it clear that the two playgrounds remain prohibited areas, the vast majority of the park remains as a dog park that you can exercise your dog.
Okay. And we had Councillor Catalano. So it won't be
Have we considered looking into a bit of education? Just the ranger turning up and educating people when they're down there doing the work to actually, you know, perhaps there's an easier way than forbidding people. It's a question of educating them. And maybe that's something the ranger could do before we go ahead and start fencing off public open space.
Mr. Bishop?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. Yep, that's part of standard practice now for our rangers. Council may recall a resolution last year to shift ranger rostering to do more patrols in the evening in parks, etc. That's primarily to do proactive and educational thing. The reality is it's obviously difficult to be there in all times and circumstances where there may be conflict.
But do we know if it's working? Do we know if the education's working?
Well, the decision hasn't been made yet, so...
No, I thought Mr. Bishop said that the rangers are doing it.
They do it, but the decision hasn't been made yet on which
No,
oval finalised
the question
yet,
answered, Mr. Bishop, is
Mm-hmm.
is it making a difference that the rangers are out there educating dog owners? Is it making a difference to the amount of, I don't know, whatever problems are out there? Is it making a difference to them? Is it making an improvement to the interaction between dog owners and other people using the spaces?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, proactive and that type of education does make a difference. Ultimately, it's a case of, is it making enough of a difference, and only feedback to yourselves and from the community can really make that judgment.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Bishop. I'm just looking at page 163 of the report with the proposed dog prohibited area. And if we look at the bottom right, we'll see we've got dogs prohibited and then dog off-lead exercise area, which sounds great. But then when you look at the fine print, and it is quite fine print, it says except during sporting and community events when dogs must be on lead at all times. So given the fact that it seems like there's an awful lot of sporting events here, it's basically a dog on lead area. Would you not agree?
Sorry, can you just repeat the page number? I'm just...
Page 163. Looks like we need to issue stuff with paper agendas.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, that's correct. As per that graphic there, it's still the case that if there was, I don't know, a public event, like when we have the Avon Descent type events or anything else occurring in that area which is sort of marked green around the ovals, or any other sporting activity, you would still be required not to allow dogs into that space.
Okay, thank you.
We had Councillor Bowman as well. Question?
So if the officer's recommendation goes through, is the oval actually marked so people know where the line is for where dogs are on leads and where not? And I ask the question because, for example, at EDOS they put cones out for cricket days and practice. I wouldn't have a clue where it is. So is it marked?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we would have to make sure it is marked, and there would obviously have to be signage that replicates that.
So if it's marked, would there be an ongoing marking? Or?
It would have to be ongoing, yes.
And so if the officer's recommendation goes through, what actually changes besides the fact you put signs up? There's nothing to stop people letting their dogs run free when cricket's happening as it is now. Is that correct? The only difference being that there's a few more signs, because my understanding is dogs running free right now during cricket training, the rangers, if they're there, can actually deal with it. So there is no difference, is there?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, could you just repeat the beginning part?
Yep. So if the officer's recommendation went through,
yep,
what actually changes, because the only issue is if your dog is off the lead, you can obviously take action, but you can already take action now if the dog is off the lead when a game is being played or when training is happening. Isn't that correct?
Yes, partly. If at the moment we can only take action during the training activities, the difference would simply be that the signage would be changed that dogs are prohibited on that oval at any time of any day, at any point. And obviously that would then, the communication campaign or advisory to the community would be to that effect, to make that clearer. The rest of the area would remain a dog exercise area, and obviously enforcement of that would be managed on that basis.
And with those locations in the City of Swan now, where dogs are not allowed to run free and on leads, does that always happen, or do we have complaints of dogs running free? Obviously, because dogs can't read them signs.
Sorry, can you just rephrase that question again for Mr. Bishop?
So dogs can't read signs. So what I'm saying is, by putting signs up, has that stopped all the dogs in other areas where they're not allowed to be off lead?
Signage does make a difference, and there's been a progressive plan over the last couple of years of improving signage at dog parks, because obviously it's not about the dogs, it's about the dog owner. I should declare I am a dog owner and exercise a dog in a park, just to be open and transparent. So I'm not anti-dogs, but it's all about making information as simple and as clear for people to apply.
Thank you. Councillor Knight had a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Regarding the dog poo, how many infringements have been handed out in the last year, and how many interactions with rangers and errant dog owners? Would you know?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't have that data to hand. I can provide that, but we know that, and I know from personal experience, there wouldn't be a lot, because it's very difficult to have the evidence to prove that dog poo came from that dog, unless you're witnessing it right at that moment.
Okay, thank you, councillors. I think if there's any further questions, you can email staff during the week before next week's meeting. I'd like to thank you for that deputation, and we have one more deputation tonight, which is 14.4.1, proposed permanent road closure of an unconstructed portion of Gaston Road, Bullsbrook. In-person deputations by Ms Jacqueline Moran, not in support of the officer's recommendation, and thank you for being patient. The last tonight, and you have 3 minutes for your deputation. Oh, just come back. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'm the landowner of the property north of the Gaston Road bit that's to be cut off. This isn't a back road. This is right next to the Tonkin Highway. There was just a road separating it. So, that's not clear on the map in the paperwork. I object to it for several reasons. My property mainly has fauna fencing, and the fauna fencing has purposely been constructed with an access gate into my land at the end of that bit of Gaston Road. There's several reasons why it was constructed there. If animals are loose on the road, they can be herded into this cut-off area and then through the access gate without any livestock getting out. It was specifically put there with that in mind, in that position. There's only a very low, basic, short ring lock and wire fence between Davidson Street and the highway, and it's not enough to deter stock from jumping it or pushing through it, especially in stampede mode. I think in Melbourne recently there were some cattle went 8 kilometres in a couple of hours to roam around one of the towns. A car's driven through the fence as well, near Tonkin, near the Neves Highway section months ago, and nobody's fixed it. I don't know who's responsible for that fence. There is quite a likelihood of animals getting out. They've already been out several times on Davidson Street. The rangers often ring me to help with cattle or advice if they are out anywhere around Bullsbrook, and even down in the Upper Swan. You get trespassers that cut the fences or drive through the fences, and you have to check your fences daily to make sure they're still intact. Numerous people also access my land. There's a UWA group that have been studying it for 20, 30 years, but Main Roads consultants often seem to enter without telling anyone. There's a Main Roads gate that they go through. And, you know, they're inexperienced people. My cattle are quiet, but they've got horns. They come running through the bush when they hear people. And I can just envisage them running out the gate, the cows getting out. They open the gate, more cows come out. So it works as an area to actually herd the cattle in. A smaller contained area could also be used in the event of a truck rolling over on the Tonkin. There was a truck rollover in December opposite this area. It's also a refuge for native animals. I believe there was a fatality not far from this bit on the Tonkin Highway exit. The emu population around Bullsbrook has exploded, and they're quite crazy, running through fences and in front of cars. They just put their head up and down and keep going. In between Stock Road and Neves Road on the Tonkin, there's two large cut-off treed areas which animals can go into, but there's nothing equivalent in this area north of Neves Road. My property has a threatened ecological area on it, which has been a study site for UWA for decades. Our family has protected the bush. We're a family of scientists. And, you know, having an extra gate, in the event of a fire, allows quick access from many people. Did
you have much more there?
Yeah, sorry, just
How
not
much
very
more
much.
did you have?
Probably about 50 seconds. Yeah,
Is
I'll be as
anyone
quick as I can.
opposed for the extra 50 seconds that she may finish the deputation?
Yep. Sorry, it's hard to judge how long it's going to take. It's hard to put an extra entrance off Davidson Street because the Gaston Road bit is dry and sandy and the rest is quite wet. There's been fires on the Bingham Road property because it's unused land, it's not grazed, it's not slashed. Having Gaston Road as an open entrance allows the fireys quick entry into there. Any future subdivision on my land can only be done via that entry because of the wetland. My gate is quite steep. Main Road's improved it, but it's still steep. I haven't had time to look properly into the legal ramifications of incorporating the land into Bingham Road. When they were building the Tonkin, I asked if I could purchase it because my entrance was so bad. And they said it had to be offered equally to all the landowners. And if it does end up being, the only purpose for it being in Bingham Road is as a roadway, so I should at least be offered a perpetual, unrestricted and unlimited easement.
Okay.
So I do have some pictures that will clarify
if you'd like to hand those around. And I'll just ask if there are any councillors who have any questions. So Councillor Catalano was the first to ask.
Your lot is north of
the
lot
northern one.
88.
Yes,
Is that
one.
right? Is it
With
right
a
on
small
the?
cleared area and then the
It's
bush
right
area.
right on the edge of Davidson and the top of that lot 88. Is that's your lot? And so you're using this bit of road here to access
I
your
have
lot.
a gateway, but
Yeah.
it's got a very short and sharp downward grading entrance.
Yeah.
And
That bit there.
Sorry?
The bit of it's off. Is it off that little bit of road? That
It's on the corner of it. Sorry.
on the corner of it.
Yeah, it's the only dry area off Davidson Street. They misjudged the culverts when they put the highway in, so the rest of it floods. But it is not good land to drive through, and you'd be destroying bush forever to build a road anywhere else.
To build another road in
Yeah.
there. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Just wondered, did you live on that? Do you live on the block or?
No, my land was cut in half when the highway was put through. So I'm behind it. So that's the other thing as well. You know, livestock, if they did get out, would think they could go home across the highway if they'd recently come from there.
Okay. All right then. Okay. And does it go right across the top of the lot 88, your lot, or is it just?
Yes, it actually goes a bit further.
Yeah.
There's another neighbour as well that I join.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
Councillor Bowman, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Just want to clarify, you said one of the reasons to keep it is because it's a good place to round up the stock. That's your stock that's getting out.
Well, it hasn't been my stock out, it's been neighbours, but, you know, if you look at the pictures, there's a lot of trucks on Tonkin, there's been a rollover. Any stock that get out, it gives the people somewhere to herd them. The only other place is the strawberry farm, and that's got crossovers that the cattle wouldn't go over.
And then did I hear you right that stock get out because people leave the gates open?
Well, that has happened with my neighbour, I think. But we also get a lot of cut fences and people driving through fences. You know, I've got a lot of land around Bullsbrook, and some of the fences, they just miss the road and drive straight through, or they do it on purpose to trespass.
So how does closing or not closing this part of the road going to stop people cutting fences?
It's not, no, if they cut the fences and the livestock get out, it gives somewhere for the animals to be put rather than roaming onto the Tonkin Highway.
Okay. And then if you go on that part of the road onto your property, am I correct that you can only go a little bit north because then you've got all the bushland, or you go through that as well?
Yeah, the bushland is mine, but yeah.
So why can't you have another driveway off of Davison Street right next to it?
It's too wet.
Yeah, this part isn't.
Yeah, that's where my entrance is at the moment. I have two entrances. There's one off Davidson Street, and then the one further down was placed as a second entrance. So if there's any large gathering, somebody local wanted to use it for clay shooting, and the study groups come there with numerous people, so it's much better to have an entrance gate and an exit gate when people are doing that.
But if you have an entrance gate and an exit gate, do they not have to then drive through your property, which is bushland, to get out?
No, the gate is quite near to the Gaston Road bit, but it's just very steep.
Okay, thank you.
I can point it out on the map if you like.
Councillor Howlett, you had a question as well?
Thank you. I'm interested in the last part of the letter that you've included in the agenda, and that was that you were told that you couldn't purchase the land because it would need to be split between neighbours. I'm just wondering who advised you that? And
That was a main roads employee when they were constructing the highway.
Okay.
Because my entrance was just really bad for a cattle truck or any vehicle.
Okay, so you didn't get that in writing, though? That was...
No, it was just on the spot at the time.
So
I said, you know, this is driving me nuts. What do I do? Can I purchase this bit of road for it's a much better gradient. Can I purchase this? And no, sorry, it's got to be divided between everybody.
Okay. Then following up from that, how did you become aware of this application by Lot 88 to purchase?
Sorry?
How did you become aware of this application to purchase by Lot 88?
I was just sent the letter saying that the road was going to be closed and amalgamated into the neighbouring property.
Okay, thank you. That is all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Podovnik, you had a question?
I was just going to ask you if you could please email your deputation over to all councillors. I'd like to read it.
Yes, yeah. I sort of had a few IT problems right in the middle of trying to do it today. Microsoft said, oh, you're not connected. You have to renew your password and all this stuff, but I will do it tomorrow.
Were there any further questions from councillors? No further questions from councillors? Any questions to staff? Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. I've got a question or two for staff. In the recommendation in point 1, it says that for the applicant to be meeting all of the costs associated with the road closure and purchase of the land from the state of WA. I'm just wondering, do we know roughly do we have an idea of what the 1,182 metre square land is valued at? And do we also know what the approximate costs are associated with the road closure?
That would go Mr. van der Lind, is it? Or no? Sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Sutherland?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we'll take that on notice because I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
And I have a follow-up question, if that's okay, please. Oh, along a similar vein, could you please also provide what the cost would be to the city to keep that road open if we weren't to allow this amalgamation to happen?
Yes, we can do that. There's fairly minimal maintenance on there at the moment and there's no other services. So it'd be minimal, but we can get an exact cost for you.
Any further questions to staff from councillors? If not, thank you very, very much for those left in the gallery, but also Jacqueline, could you please email staff regarding that broken fence so we can determine whether, sorry? I can't quite hear you from there, sorry.
Yeah. If it was kept, because from what I can read of the legal process, it becomes unallocated Crown land, that would provide an offset area similar to the Tonkin, instead of actually being sold and amalgamated. And that would, as just an unallocated Crown land, it could still be used as an access without council having to do much to it, but it would be a refuge for the animals.
Thank you. But if you could also email staff regarding that broken fence so we can determine if there is an action to be taken, that would be great. Thank you. We thank everybody in the gallery tonight for their attendance, and I'd like to thank staff as well tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week for those that come to the Ordinary Council meeting. I'd like to ask Council... Sorry? I haven't finished yet. Oh yeah, so we've got any councillor questions in regard to items on the agenda? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Got quite a few actually. Page 22. I'll start off with, has the state government introduced regulations that actually require us to apply AASB 124? Because there was a stage when we weren't actually required. It was one of those nice things.
Through you, Mr. CEO.
Related party disclosures.
165.
So you're referring to the related through the chair, the related party disclosure item?
Yeah. Page 20.
22.
Is
And can I just ask Councillor which specific provision?
Is it regulated? Has the state regulated it as a requirement for councils to do it? I know it's one of those nice things that we do in a policy, but is it a regulated requirement?
Yes.
It has been regulated
Yes,
now?
Yes, there is a requirement for this disclosure.
Yeah, that's what the bean counters say. Okay, I just want to be clear where we're heading.
Do you want me to, subsequent to this, provide you the specific regulation?
If you could just let me know if it has actually been regulated, that'd be great, thank you.
Okay.
So down the bottom of page 22, under significant, the last two words, it says taxpayer relationship. Is it taxpayer or is it the ratepayer?
Sorry, just give me this page again.
Page 22.
Okay, sorry, I've slipped down to the end.
Down the bottom where it says
looking at the
significant.
regulation requirement because
Where it says significant?
Yeah.
The paragraph, the last two words, it says taxpayer relationship.
Okay.
Because this thing cuts across all levels of government, I think. So I think perhaps it should be ratepayer relationship.
That's a definition, so we'll come back and confirm the definition.
Okay.
But if I just come back to the previous response, you would have seen, for instance, at the bottom of the policy, it referenced the Australian Accounting Board standard and related party disclosures. There's also a requirement under the financial regulations for us to adhere to all Australian accounting standards, but I'll come back with any other specific regulations to you.
Thank you, Madam.
Any further questions to staff?
Yeah, plenty. Just to respond to that, it is a requirement of the accounting profession, but it hadn't actually been, some time ago, it hadn't actually been regulated as a requirement. It's only there because of our annual report. It gets a ticker box. but I heard it was being regulated. I want to be sure. On the next page, page 24, we've got a section that's identifying related party transactions, and then it's identifying ordinary citizen transactions. So I was wondering why dot point 4 at the top of page 24, I was wondering why application fees paid to the city for licences, approvals or permits, why that wouldn't fit into 5.3, which is ordinary citizen transactions.
Through you, Mr. CEO.
If Mr. Vasquez wishes to comment on it, if not, we can always take that notice, David.
Yeah, that's fine if you need to.
Sorry, that's working. So yeah, the ordinary citizen transactions is generally referring to, say, the pool or fees and charges that everyone has access to, whereas an application or a licence, that would be an individual application at the time and would trigger that relationship, as opposed to just a general fee that all ratepayers and citizens would have access to.
Okay, I'm not sure that I followed that, but okay. On the bottom of page 25, identifying information about related parties, it says there that all information contained in disclosure returns will be treated as confidential. Would they be accessible under FOI?
Through the chair.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Through the chair, information that is of a confidential nature can't be accessed through FOI. So the Privacy Act provides you some protection of any information which is of personal nature.
That's okay. I just want to be sure. Thank you. And on page 26, under 5.6, it says here that declarations will be required quarterly. I really want to know why we are pushing such an arduous process when annually is all we need for our annual report. Can we change that to annually? Or do we have an ability to change it?
As the policy is before council, of course we have an ability to change it. We'll just come to confirm why it had quarterly. Looking at that, it seems a little strange to me too, as there's an annual declaration requirement. But I think Mr. Travascus might have a specific answer.
Yeah, through the chair, it's not a requirement, but doing it quarterly ensures not so much councillors, but certainly key staff who leave throughout the year that we are capturing their declarations throughout the year, because the risk is if you do it just once a year, a staff member will be a key person for part of the year, but then they'll leave, and then it's hard to get that form in when they've left, and then we're not compliant with getting the declaration because they were a key staff member for part of the year. So that's the benefit of doing it on more regular occasions than just annually.
Thank you for the response. Not that I want to appear to be any different to anyone else, but perhaps we should be looking at a clause to separate where we've got variation in staff versus longer term.
Through the chair, I'd make the same recommendation, that declaration required quarterly in brackets for staff, and we just continue on as it is.
Okay, well, we'll look at working up some changes for the meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got more.
Are there questions that you might be able to put in writing to staff during the week?
I thought Councillor Johnson made the point clearly that we're here to discuss
We are,
matters.
and we are able to accommodate that. I'm just wondering if there are questions that might be easily answered, but that's fine if you want to continue with
I'd
those.
like
Sorry.
to hear them.
I said it's fine. He can
Thank you.
continue.
I know, and I just said I'd like to hear them. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Page 29. The use of use of City of Swan logo and civil crest. I wonder why we don't include the Merrill chains in this, because obviously for political purposes, people have been known to utilise all of those, and it would seem as though we should include Merrill chains. Why haven't they been included?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Through the chair, the Merrill chains can only be worn by someone occupying the office of the mayor. So it's a very restrictive obligation around the table. Only the mayor has the right to wear the chains. There is no need to be as prescriptive with that, knowing that from the purposes of, as you mentioned, political, you're restrained during an election caretaker period from using any form of office that identifies you as a council for political purposes.
So 2.1.f for Freddie refers to the City Swan logo, and the crest must not be used for political purposes. Should it not include and Merrill chains?
Through the chair, the policy is specific to the Swan logo and civic crest. That's why it refers to the Swan logo and the civic crest.
Okay.
Further question?
Oh, lots more. The use of the crest, or well, in this case, the crest. Some councillors have been able to get a coat or a jacket or a shirt or whatever emblazoned with the crest. Should we include a point 6 to include councillor clothing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry, the CEO. You can be Mayor.
It's a long night, Madam
Yes,
Mayor.
it will be.
So the city doesn't provide you with a coat with the crest sewn onto it. So we hadn't sought the need to exclude what we don't actually provide you.
Just a moment. Councillor Henderson is going to continue to finish his list of questions.
Page 33, top of the page, part C. Does urban art include graffiti?
Through the chair? No.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm sorry.
Unless it's Banksy. I'll deal with that one later. The next one is the Gidgegunnup place that we're talking about, local area plan. On page 72, and I just, while you're looking that up, I just want to congratulate staff on a great effort that they put into this one. It's been really well received and it's come up really nicely. The second block on the top of the page, the Percy Cullen Overland Gidgegunnup Showgrounds hosts several sports programs. They host lots, so it should say numerous. These are small changes. Things like on the next page, business, we talk about the bakery and such things, but we don't talk about the medical centre and pharmacy. I think they should be included. The next page, page 75. I need some clarification. Chair, if I may, Councillor, we're happy to take any of those administrative, minor administrative regular.
Yep.
All I'd suggest is you just send us a list of what some of them are.
Yep.
And happy to consider that in part of the draft.
I think they
remember
are.
we can amend these things administratively without having to come back for a specific
I do
decision.
think they are mostly
of council.
that.
Yep.
There's one that's probably needs to be looked at carefully is the page 75, first paragraph top. The last words are 10 dwellings per annum in some areas. Is it per acre or is it per what? Doesn't sound right.
Councillor Henderson might, through the chair, ask Mr van der Linde.
My apologies, Madam Mayor. Yeah, that should be per hectare.
Deputy Mayor Johnson, you had a question?
Yeah, I've got one question. On page 41, this is the report about community advisory grants, which lists all of the grants to organisations, and then in the confidential section it lists individual grants to individuals, particularly students. It says on page 41, it should be noted that all programme funding under the new policy is now reported by publishing on the city's website, As such, there will not be a need for an annual grant funding report in future years. There is a resolution requiring an annual grant funding report. It is like an annual summary. It needs to be a matter of public record, so it will continue to be published. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Catalano?
Just getting back to the coats with the logo on it and the shirts with the logo and ties.
Corporate clothing.
Where'd they get those from then? If the city, I assumed the city actually provided
It's corporate
them.
clothing, so through
I
you,
assume the
CEO.
city did provide them with those.
Through the chair, the city only provides its employees with a shirt or, in some cases, a pair of pants, which has a logo on it. That has the city's logo, not the council or the city crest.
But I've
Hang
seen
on,
councillors with it. I just wondered, is that something then that councillors shouldn't be wearing? Because if councillors, I've seen councillors wear it.
I can explain this.
Through the chair. Sorry, councillor.
I think about 6 years ago we had and it's been abolished. There was, can you believe, and I know Councillor Henderson and I was stunned by this, there was a councillor uniform. You could buy, the city would give you jackets and things, and well, we abolished that because it was just plain silly and replaced it with the clothing allowance. There may still be some items of clothing with the city, the council crest on it kicking around. I don't have any, except for the tie that I've got here.
So can we confirm then, through you, Mr. CEO, whether that corporate clothing can still be or is now exempt from being worn?
So we can't provide you with corporate clothing. You opted to take a clothing allowance to be able to deal with that. I said the only persons who have councillors, any staff wearing a shirt with a corporate logo on it?
Do any councillors
No,
have any of the old uniform?
Mr. Vandeler is.
Hang on a sec. Oh, just a moment, please. So we're just, yes, just a moment. We do have councillors who've just indicated that they do have the old corporate clothing, and we need to discuss whether that is now defunct or extinct. And, sorry, through you, Mr. CEO, if we call that tonight, is that the direction that council are going in, and that corporate clothing is no longer to be worn?
So through the chair, the only corporate clothing we issue is to staff for specific front-facing purposes. We don't issue corporate clothing or apparel to councillors. We do issue nameplates and other forms of identification, but as I said, you're not employees of the city or the council of the city. That's why you've chosen to get a clothing allowance.
On which we could have the crest or every wish and as mentioned.
No, that's not the understanding of my policy.
Sorry. Wasn't the issue about actually using it for political purposes? So, I mean, that needs to be cleared up in this document that we've got to look at. So, are councillors allowed to go out and use their clothing that they might have got 6 years ago or whatever for political purposes? That needs to be cleared up in the policy.
So the policy is specific in that. It says you can't use the crest for electoral purposes. It says that now in the policy. That's been pointed out by Councillor Henderson.
Where is that part? Can you quote that part of the policy?
Or 24, I think you said.
Sorry, areas of use separate to the issue of political use, which you can't use during election period, obviously, but otherwise, it's, you should be allowed to have the crest on a shirt or a blazer for your normal council duties, and that's why I'm suggesting that need be added as a point 6 under 2.2.a. Don't forget, if you do buy clothes specific for the purpose of a council meeting and the like, you can't claim a tax deduction on your expenditure unless it has that crest on it.
So just to reiterate through the CEO, if you could please clarify, if corporate uniform is not available to councillors but had been previously and is now not part of the policy, can that old uniform still be worn?
Through the chair, if we've given you something in the past you've had access to, noting that Councillor Johnson, this is pre my time, I don't know what the council resolution was 6 years ago. I can talk about a year ago, but not 6 years ago. We'd probably need to go back and check.
All we did was discontinue the uniform and replace it with an allowance. We didn't discontinue wearing the items that had already been issued. I don't have any except for this tie, which...
Okay, if we can get some clarification on that, and then we'll proceed with where to go with those that do have the older uniform stock, and we'll follow up with that with you from staff. All right, are there any other questions from councillors to staff? Councillor Bowman.
Just continuing on from Councillor Henderson's, not about the Crestal policy. The related party disclosure, where it's got quarterly, can staff advise what's currently in the policy? Is it quarterly now?
Through the chair, we'll take on a notice, but normally unless there's a track change shown, that's the extent policy. So I'm going to suggest it says quarterly at present. I'll come back and confirm that to you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Singh, Councillor McCulloch, are there any questions that you'd like to bring up we might have missed? Okay. No?
Madam Mayor, just a really quick question on page 228, which is Financial Management Report in December. Just wanted to know what the nearly 70 grand was spent on in regards to Paradise Keys. I don't know if that was like a land acquisition or something.
So
Maybe
page
staff can
228
answer.
in...
228, yeah. So it's under capital projects. Oh, sorry, 229, land use Paradise Keys, 69,000. Just wanted to know what it was used for.
Regarding Paradise Keys?
Yeah.
So I'll put that, ask Mr Van der Linde if we might be able to locate that item and then comment on that.
Through the chair, it doesn't include any land transactions. I know there is a fee we've paid recently to Western Power for one thing, but we've also arranged a presentation at the next ward meeting on the Paradise Keys development, and that'll be coming into your ward meeting.
Is that what the 3D model is going to be used for? Or is that something different?
I can't tell you, but we'll find out.
Okay. Councillor Henderson?
More, I'm sorry. Page 93. In respect of the North Ellenbrook structure plan, would it be advisable to include a point C to reiterate within our motion again that the City of Swan has no capacity to fund any shortfall of funds between the federal government, state government and the applicant? Would it be of value to just to make sure that that's there, Mr CEO?
CEO.
Thank you. Through the chair, look, as Mr Van der Linde has made it clear, the city has said the DCP will not include any requirement to fund that. The only mechanism by which it could come will be through a DCP, and that's not up for consideration as part of this.
Are there any further questions from councillors to staff? Councillor Howlett.
Thanks. Hopefully I'm the last question for everybody. On the financial report, page 229, under land, the new junction new junction demolition work was budgeted at 50,000. It's blew out to 141% to nearly 71,000. Just wondering, are there any further costs associated with that demolition work, i.e. the fencing or any remediation, or is that all been budgeted and paid for in that 70,000?
Mr CEO.
Thank you, and I think I've already provided a response to you that all of that, from one of the other emails, all of that's included in the one quote. There is no additional cost for the ongoing fencing. And as some of the latent conditions were in the site, particularly the asbestos removal, which went on for weeks, that's why the quote exceeded its original estimate.
Are there any final questions to staff? If not, I'd like to close the meeting now at 8 p.m. and thank everyone for coming. And I just want to ask